Alyssa back with you on Wednesday for our workplace wellness discussion. And today we are talking about managing and sort of regulating your emotions at work, which I think we both are very interested in because we work with people a lot when it comes to emotions. So, hi, Alyssa, how are you today?
Hello, Linda. I'm well. How are you? Thank you.
Yes, doing very well, thank you. So, how should we start with talking about emotions? What would you like to start with?
Emotions. I think emotions sometimes can be tricky, but I think
Mm,
they're great messengers.
mhm,
And if you ever watch the movie Inside Out,
mm,
I think it's a great way of understanding how our emotions work. That movie really resonated with me because it's for kids. It's a Pixar movie, and and the second version, the second part, um, talks more about other emotions like anxiety, like frustration. So there are a lot of emotions. Now, I think it's important to first of all become aware of them, not to push them back, not to reject them, because they are there for a reason. Now, in order for emotions to not control us, I think that's the key, to be aware of them and to learn how to manage them, to get the messages that we need to get, but again, not let us get out of control. And unfortunately, sometimes they do, and it's part of being human, and it is the way our brains work, because our nervous system is trying to protect us from something. So if we teach our nervous system to feel safe in these type of situations that may be triggering, then I think we will be able to better regulate and manage our emotions.
yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think emotions are I think I see it as it's like a guidance system. It's your body's way of telling you something. When you're feeling really great, things are flowing, things are going well. When you feel an uncomfortable emotion, then something has been triggered. There's something going on. I see it that there are two ways that we can look at emotion. One is, I think, if you are a very sensitive person, a highly sensitive person, perhaps an empath, sometimes there may be times when something, we feel things so much more deeply than most other people. So, for example, um, if I love animals, right? If I see anything where there's a dog or a cat, or, like I could watch Dog Agility and I could be in tears. Why? Because I have this deep connection with animals. I love to see them. They're so happy and joyful and, doing what they're doing. And so that can bring intense emotion to me. And that's not a negative thing. I used to think of it as a negative thing because I think I don't want people to cry. I don't want to cry in front of people. Or, if I go see a movie, very often, if there's a lot of emotion in the movie, it might affect me very deeply. I can't not feel that. And so, if that's the case, I mean, obviously, you don't want to be bursting into tears every 5 minutes at work or anything like that. People will see it as a sign of weakness. One of the things I have learned as a highly sensitive person is to help people understand what I'm experiencing. Um, Sometimes I will tell people, you just have to excuse me. I tend to get very emotional, or certain things affect me very deeply, and sometimes that results in crying or emotion. There's nothing wrong. It's just I'm feeling it, and that's how it's coming out. And I have found that when I tell people that ahead of time, they actually appreciate it, because then they could ignore me because they know there's nothing wrong. Right. And it's not that I'm crying all the time or anything like that. It's just certain situations might bring that on me. And, if you are in a work situation, sometimes I could be talking to a client who's been through something really traumatic and they are very emotional. And sometimes I will feel that so intensely that it can make me emotional as well. So it's that natural part of who you are as a highly sensitive person. And that is nothing to be ashamed of, it's what you feel. So I think the main thing there is helping people perhaps understand that if you need to, you don't have to go around telling everybody, but where appropriate, you might need, for example, to say something to your boss if they might think there's something wrong or somebody's upset you, and you can just let them know that's not the case. This is just part of the trait of high sensitivity, and you're fine, and you'll be over it very soon. Then there's the other side of emotions, and that is when something happens or somebody says something to you or something's going on at work and it makes you feel a certain way. So you might feel angry, you might feel frustrated, you might feel like you're being ignored, something like that. And so when there's an emotion like that, it's just like you said in the beginning. It's something that you, even if it's anger, yeah, you don't want to be shouting at everybody at work. You don't want to be displaying that anger necessarily in the workplace. However, it's a sign that there's something in you that needs to be addressed. It's not that person made me angry. They didn't put that anger there. There is something within you that when a certain thing happens, it triggers this anger that's already there. And so that is something for you to look at. That's a wonderful message for you to say, okay, what's really going on here? What has been triggered? What is it? What's at the root of this? And that is an amazing learning opportunity. And I think when you are willing to explore those uncomfortable emotions in that way, that's when they stop controlling you. They stop happening unexpectedly, right? They don't take you over in the same way, because now you're shining a spotlight on it and you're saying, okay, I recognize this is in me, it's being triggered in me, and I'm willing to find out why. That's kind of
Yes.
how I see it.
Yes, I think being aware of those triggers, it's really key. And that's one of the things that, for example, in my work, when I address emotions and I go with my client into this journey, is to really become aware of what's triggering this type of behavior. Because once you identify those events, then it's easier to separate and work on those events. The way the brain works is you have different memories stored from when you were born, and sometimes we don't understand why we react a certain way, but there most likely has been an event in our life that happened early on. And then when we experience the same type of situation or similar, we get triggered and these emotions come to life. They may come more intense. Now, lowering that intensity, working with the nervous system. In my work, for example, I do it with EFT tapping because I'm educating the nervous system to feel safe as we process and release and understand. Even if we don't understand it, we don't need to understand everything, but just sending that signal to the amygdala in the brain, it's a great way to help regulate, because it's all about, yes, learning how to regulate. Sometimes, again, we don't understand why this is happening, but for some reason, the nervous system feels there is a threat
Yeah.
and there is a mechanism of protection. And that's what happens when there are negative emotions, these emotions that are hard to feel. Now, it's not about just changing and, oh, I don't want to feel this. This is not good for me. Oh, I'm just gonna go into my happy mode. It
Hmm.
doesn't go that way. You really need to acknowledge, because I remember even in my journey, um, with anxiety. I really didn't want to feel anxious. I just pushed back all those feelings. I was so afraid of feeling the tightness in my chest. I at one point I thought I was going to have a heart attack for several times. And the moment I started to go into those uncomfortable feelings and emotions, sensations, it was scary. Don't get me wrong, it was very scary. But the moment I started to use a more positive self talk and say, okay, it's okay, this is not going to kill me, this is a reaction from my body,
Mhm.
then things really shifted for me. Then I started to understand and get more in tune with what was happening, what was triggering me. But I think it's important to look at this with curiosity and also with a lot of self-compassion, because
Mhm.
sometimes we don't accept it. We don't want to feel this way. We feel ashamed, and there are so many emotions going on that it is overwhelming. It can be very intense. So one of the things that I learned is to slow down. I'm the type of person that it's like very high energy sometimes and wants to do things fast. And it took me a while. Like maybe I project this personality of like calmness, but sometimes it's not the case. Inside of me, I'm like very high energy and maybe a little bit of anxious energy. So even to talk more slowly, to take more breath in between the conversation, that helps you right there regulate. And for example, when you're in a high pressure environment, don't feel like you have to answer right away. You can pause and say, okay, I'm going to think about this. I don't have to make a decision right now, because sometimes we are maybe pressured to take a decision because we need to, and maybe it's not the right moment to take it because we are not really in our five senses. We're not really focused to make that decision. We may be taking it from a place of just being stressed and wanting to do it right away. So slowing down is one thing, taking deep breath, finding ways to come back to your center, to ground yourself, even putting the feet on the ground and feeling
Mhm.
your whole body, going back to the body. These are ways for you to start regulating yourself. And again, it's a work that takes practice. It's like building a muscle, like everything. And you don't have to do it alone either. I learned, there is so many things I can do on my own, but I also uh, counted with the support of other coaches, of a community, of many resources. So that's also important.
It is, and that's really well said. And I think, we get into difficulty when we resist what we're feeling, or we think we should just snap out of it. The thing is, if you resist it, or if you say, I shouldn't be feeling this, and you try to, and you sort of attempt to sort of push the emotion away and focus on something positive, that emotion hasn't gone anywhere. That energy of it is still there, and it will only show up in different ways. And I think it's important to point out that it doesn't matter how, this is a work in progress. You and I do this work every day, and we are still impacted sometimes. A couple of weeks ago, my husband said something to me. It was a perfectly innocent, sort of jokey type of comment, but there was an immediate reaction in me because it had it had triggered something from my childhood, something about the way I was treated then and everything, and I could feel it in my body. It was an immediate trigger. Now, fortunately, I knew enough to know what it was, and I said to him, "Okay, you just triggered this," and so I was able to talk it through. But when that happens, you have to recognize that, if I hadn't had that awareness, and in the past this is what would have happened, he would have said that. I would have got angry with him for saying that. He would have wondered, what did I do? I was just joking. I just said this. And if you don't have that awareness of where this comes from, you haven't done that work to really understand, then that could create a big fight between me and him. It would affect our relationship. It would affect so many other things. That's why this awareness is so important, and paying attention to what you feel. Like you said, what triggers it? What are your triggers? And it's not something that you just snap out of it and it's gone. There will be times, as you do this, the things will be triggered because they are stored within you. And it's that willingness to understand it and be willing to release it, learn how to release it in whatever way is right for you. And that's where the value of a coach comes in, like you with EFT. It's about helping you understand what's going on, understand what's triggering it, and then learn how to go through it, release it, let it go, move on from that so that it doesn't control you anymore. It's such a powerful thing, and there's so much you can do. I think the thing to understand is what's going on for you, how is it impacting you and your work, and what is it you need to be aware of? What can you look at within yourself? The mistake is, don't make it about the other person or about a situation. That's just a trigger, right? It's not, nobody's doing it to you. Nobody's making you angry or making you anxious. That is something that's already there, and it's being triggered by something or someone.
Yes, it is true. It's important to look at those triggers.
Yes.
And sometimes they are very uncomfortable, but we can learn so much from them.
Yeah.
It can be painful, and you wish they didn't exist, but there are good teachers.
They are extremely good teachers. And, I really encourage people, if you have something going on like that and you don't know how to deal with it, or you don't know how to get to the bottom of it, that's what we're here for. Reach out to Alyssa or reach out to me, and we can have a conversation about what's going on for you. Because you don't have to suffer, you don't have to struggle. We both have a number of ways of supporting you, so you never have to be alone in that. And I know it can be difficult especially when you're in a work situation, you feel like you have to keep it together all the time. I know, as a highly sensitive person, I would say probably, especially if you happen to be a highly sensitive man, it's very difficult to give into emotions at work. You think you've got to keep it all contained because otherwise it's a sign of weakness. And you can't just keep those emotions contained all the time. You've got to look at them at some point.
Yes.
Otherwise, that's when health issues start to arise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Somehow, somewhere, they will come out.
Yes. All right. I think our time is up again, and this is a great conversation. I love talking about this kind of thing. And our topic for next week is talking about how to deal with people at work who have perhaps toxic energy. And, you have to be around them and you have to deal with them. How do you deal with that? So we'll have a conversation about that next week. So if that's something that applies to you, be sure to tune in. And also reach out to us, send in your questions, requests for topics. We always love to hear from you, and anything that you want us to discuss. So thanks again, Alyssa.
Thank you, Linda.
And we will talk again next week.
Next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.